Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk about a difficult subject which is defending in tough situations. Now, as sportsmen, we ideally would like to win as many games as possible and in as easy and smooth way as possible. We don't really want to get into trouble and suffer as a consequence of our mistakes, but this can happen quite often than we would like to see in our games. So it is very likely that in every tournament we play, there will be few games where we get into difficulty due to probably some opening related mistake or mistakes in early or late middle game, and we get into trouble. Now, usually what happens in such situations, we are most of us will lose hope, especially if our opponent is a strong player. We will think like already we probably did not have a chance against our opponent because he's so good than us. But when we get into trouble, this feeling of insecurity can become a bit more pronounced and we start losing hope. Usually, what I believe is like before we actually lose the game on the board, we lose the game in our head first, inside our head. So we become desperate, we lose hope, and everything looks bleak. And then, in that desperate situation, if we have to suffer for a longer period of time, then mistakes also start creeping in. And usually, when mistakes happen, they don't come in isolation. Usually, they come two or three mistakes in the span of a few moves. So, and the position collapses beyond retrieval, and we lose. So, it is very important, in my view, to get some extra half point, to score that extra half point by doing something which we normally will not do. For example, let's say if my endgame skill is not so good, then it makes a lot of sense for me to work a lot on endgames, become a good endgame player, improve my technique, and then score that extra half point. Usually, like I get an advantage and my opponent somehow escapes with a draw, but now I'm able to outplay my opponent when if I get a small advantage. So this is the endgame technique, and it makes sense to improve work and make improvement in our endgame technique. And another area I would strongly suggest everyone to make progress is in their defensive skills. So if we can save half point in every tournament, then over a period of time it can become quite considerable, and it also gives us a lot of confidence in difficult situations. It also puts pressure on our opponent. If they realize that we are good in defense, then even when they get advantage, they will not believe that they can beat us because we are so good in defending. So it will sow some seeds of doubt in our opponent mind. So it is very important, difficult situations, not to lose the game in our head first. You have to keep hanging in there. We got into trouble in the first turn because we made some mistakes, and it's very important we stop the leakage. We stop making more mistakes. As I mentioned earlier, mistakes don't come in isolation, they come in groups. So once you realize you have made a mistake, then it is important we don't panic and start doing desperate things like playing for cheap tricks and taking huge risks. And if our opponent manages to spot the trick and avoid, then we are in a hopeless situation. So it is very important to stop making any more mistakes, stop giving any more concessions to our opponent, and start resisting. The other thing we need to be clear is just because we are resisting, it does not guarantee that we will be able to save them. We are just resisting in the hope that it will induce our opponent to make mistakes. So just because resisting, we are not going to save the point every time we resist. It just puts our opponent in a difficult situation. He is expecting us to make more mistakes, and he doesn't have to do much to win the game because we are already in bad form and we have already made mistakes, and looks like we are going to make more mistakes. But when we stop making the mistakes, then our opponent is anticipating us to make more mistakes. When that does not happen, they will soon lose patience, and suddenly the realization hits that they are not going to win because of our mistakes. They have to win because they play better chess than us, and this puts them in a difficult situation, and suddenly they have to raise their level of alertness, improve their concentration, and start finding good moves, which probably they are not ready psychologically. So this is what we are hoping will happen to our opponent, and then they become desperate because they are not able to see the win clearly, and then they try to win by doing some crazy stuff, which gives us counterplay, and we hopefully capitalize and escape. Sometimes it is possible in their desperation they do something utterly crazy, we can even get an advantage ourselves. So let's jump into the position. So this is the first position I want.